Hello, welcome to Community of Writers. My name is Justin Kitts. I'll be your host today. My first guest today is Billy Sedlmayr. He's a writer, musician, and his career has spanned over 3 decades here in Tucson, playing in bands like the Pedestrians, the Giant Sandworms, and Billy Sedlmayr and the Mother Higgins Children's Band, among others. He's a writer of poetry and prose, of music and stories. Billy, welcome.
Hi, Justin. Nice to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming. So when did you start playing music, Billy?
I got my first drum set when I was I think 11 or 12, maybe 11, maybe I think. My dad knew a guy that worked on the newspaper, the Daily Star, just a reporter, and his name was Paul Humphrey, and he played drums, and he had a little Ludwig orange sparkle set and for $175, and I knew I wanted to be a drummer from the time I was about 4 or 5, which is pretty weird, but I did. Told my mom I wanted to be Ringo Starr, or just Ringo, I guess, you know. Maybe I didn't know if it was the Ringo the Kid, the outlaw, or Ringo Starr, but I sort of did a mix in the end. So, but anyways, yeah, so that's when I got my drums and learned how to read music, and no one had to tell me to practice. I practiced, you know what I mean? I'd go home from school
in
and
your blood right
play
away.
the records. Yeah, I just loved it, man. And yeah, music had been was my linchpin to the world, you know?
Yeah.
It was my key.
And how old were you when you started, or were you joined your first band?
6th grade. Me and my friend Van Christian and David Seeger, who was in the Giant Sandworms. Van Christian ended up being in Naked Prey and Green on Red. Anyways, so all big bands from here, you know, as far as, you know, big band. Green on Red was fairly big, all nationwide. But anyways, so yeah, but we had our first band in 6th grade. And I don't remember our name, but we played at the dances. You know, we played at the dances and stuff. And we do like, come on, and probably a high voice, let's go space trucking. Doing Deep Purple covers and stuff, you know. But I remember we did a Velvet Underground song too, Sweet Jane, which is so funny, you know. So already we were doing the decadent Lou Reed and stuff. It's pretty hilarious thinking of how young we were, you know.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't mind opening up with a song if that'd be okay with you. Do you mind playing a little something with me?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah. Let me see.
Maybe tell us a little bit about the song beforehand and
absolutely.
What you were thinking when you wrote it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's called Ankle Bracelet Angels, and it's I've been on a writing jag. It's nothing like I can't set out to do that. It just happens, and I'm getting ready to go back and make a third, maybe a last record, but Gabriel Sullivan's been the producer of the first 2, and I believe he'll be the producer on the last. He's great. He's my homeboy, and he's really good. He's a young man that is way beyond his years, you know, and understanding of music. And I have a band called the Mother Higgins Children's Band that plays with me, and incredible bunch of guys. So anyway, so I'm writing this with that in mind, and it's a song about a man that gets out of prison and is looking for a woman that he loved, and the whole town has changed, and he can't find her, and how that feels when you get out and everything is different, and it's like you don't have a way back in, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, with no further ado, 2, 3, 4... Conductor pulls on a cigarette, reads the stars by lantern light. We count the words like boxcars as they rail by through the night. And sometimes late at night I still hear you move, my way to you. There's a place 300 miles west of here, they say. Me, I coming like the wind, I go out with the rain. You know hearts will stay ahead of you. You know hearts will keep ahead of you. Engineer, have you seen my girl? Can you give me her address? He said, son, she went looking with her new man for that long white wedding dress. The gown was stained with jealousy and fear, but the sales clerk said, I kept that for you, dear. There's a place 300 miles west of here, they say. Me, I coming like the wind, I go out with the rain. You know hearts will stay. Smallpox put a scar around her eye. When I hit the bricks and come back home, it was you who was on my mind. The hood rats say you married, the hipsters say you died. I can't find you anywhere. Oh, goddamn town. Gentrified. Oh, been re-gentrified. From them lovesick battlefield. Don't worry, baby. Don't worry.
Thank you. That was great, man.
Thanks. Couple little myths, but that's okay.
Oh, it sounded great.
Makes us human.
Yeah, no, that was great.
Thank you.
So when did you really start getting serious about your writing? I know you wrote in the band.
Yeah, a little tiny bit in the Giant Sandworms, but not much. You know what I mean? I wrote a few songs when we went to New York. When we went to New York, I did have a lot of things going on. Mm-hmm. We moved on to Avenue B and 3rd Street, which was the biggest open-air drug markets ever known to to a city. That city, New York City, that we moved to is gone. It's no more. It was a very rough, beautiful, incredible place. I got thrown out of a 13-story high-rise in Spanish Harlem into a garbage, thank God, not on the street, or I wouldn't be here, but had a lot of experiences, and it wasn't like these happened to me by happenstance. I was just walking down the street.
Yeah.
You know, I was looking for trouble.
Sure.
And so I found it, but while we were doing that, we were fighting to play, you know, like, you know, in the snow, moving our equipment, you know, 5 steps up into these clubs. Max's had just closed, you know, and that had been the place that had spurred, you know, so many bands, you know, Television and Johnny Thunders, you know, the Dolls had played, everybody, you know, and so that scene had died, and so we were playing CBGBs for $60 a gig, and anyways, Reiner had not come with us to New York, so we were a 3-piece, me, Seeger, Dave Seeger, and Howie Gelb, who still has the band. It's just called Giant Sand, and they've done pretty well, but this was a really unique schizophrenic band, and it probably was bound not to do well, but you know, but it's funny, yesterday morning, I just for kicks, I got Spotify for 3 months for free, and I looked and I put Giant Sandworms in, and they have like 15 songs live at CBGB's, live in New York, live.
Yeah, I listened to some of that.
And it blew me away. I was like, wow, you know, because I love hearing me drum. It makes me feel good, because they were my real, that was my love, you know.
So it sounds like you've had a lot of fodder for writing.
Yeah, for writing. So I started really seriously, truly, when I got locked up, man.
Yeah. Is this around the time, now you have a mentor,
Richard Shelton.
Richard Shelton.
Yeah, so when I pulled a really stupid thing. I had a really good band that was doing great with my soon-to-be wife, Bridget Keating, Mark Slove, some other really good guys, Scott Garber, who was from Giant Sand. And then, anyways, we had a band called Las Cruces, and we were rapidly moving up the frame, and these were still the days where you could, you know, the record companies would pimp you, but still you got paid at least. They'd take it back, but at least you got some money. Now they just steal it, you get nothing. But in my infinite wisdom, I robbed a Dairy Queen with a screwdriver, and which is a real punk move, and I'm not proud of it, but I think in there I got so used to being with people that have murdered people, and on the maximum yards with rapists, murderers, armed robbers who shot people in their things, that I felt that's who I was.
Bound to make you a little jaded, right?
Right. Well, I thought that's who I was, and then I realized, I guess maybe last year, I really wasn't all who I was. I did a really stupid punk move, and because of my parents' notoriety in this town, and my father's, and you know, my father was a bank president and head of every organization there could be for the betterment of the community, and my uncle was a police officer. So they were bound and determined to crucify me pretty good.
Sure.
And they did a good job, man. 10 years is a pretty good job.
Hefty sentence.
Had you been someone else, I don't think it would have caught at 4 or 5. But anyways, spilt milk.
And that's where you met Richard?
That's where I met Richard,
Richard Shelton was he's the former head of the U of A writing department.
Right, and an incredibly well-known Southwestern writer of real maturity and excellence. You know, he if I could do anything for people, if they're listening, go read Richard Shelton's on the Wire. It's a book about working with guys like me in these writing classes that he did in Florence, and then in Cimarron, which is another Max down in Wilmot. And he's got there's books of his. Other ones that I love are The Bust of Veracruz, Going Back to Bisbee, which was huge, a big bestseller. And then his last book was Nothing. I believe his title is Nothing Rich or Famous, we were nothing rich and famous. I did a big article in Tucson Weekly about it, and
yeah, that was a great
just,
article.
Just an incredible man who's got 30 books, every one of which is better than the last one.
Yeah.
And he was a teacher of such intense. He treated everyone the same. The class was a lot of gang stuff was going on. People used classes like this to move dope, to move,
sure.
to do hits
Taking
on people, to
something.
violence. If you name it, things happened. And Richard was hip to what was going on and would disallow it to be a class thing where, okay, the blacks can't talk because they're outnumbered, or this person, everybody got to talk. You know what I mean? He brought it down to the level that you're here, and if you're here, you're going to listen.
Right.
And if you're here just to do something, but he
was there to empower writers.
Exactly, empower writers, help those who weren't very good writers, and not blow smoke up their ass. He was telling them who they were, what they could do to get better. And I got to admire and respect and love Richard so much that I still stay in touch with him.
Yeah,
and
it sounds like the feeling's mutual. He definitely saw something in you too, from what I understand.
Yeah, he did. When I went back to prison after doing 9, and after 2 years out here hanging by my nails on the wall, I went back. I blew a couple of UAs and ripped off a pack of cigarettes from a Circle K, and they turned that into going back for another 5. There was a little bit of drugs involved, but I'm talking about $20 worth. So anyways, man, it's not poor me, whatever. What happened is what happened. But I'm just saying the drug war has killed and destroyed more people in this world than it ever. It was always meant to do that. Sure. It was never meant for anything but the complete destruction. It was like America eats its young.
Right. I think a lot of writers and artists struggle with substance abuse too. I think that's a very common theme.
Yeah, it seems to be. Yeah, like when you watch documentaries about musicians now, I always just go, okay, like my heroes are like Miles, Billie Holiday. Those people are the ones who really speak to me. And it's always like artists work so hard to get somewhere. Artist finds heroin. You know what I mean? Artist finds Charlie Parker. Artist finds booze and heroin. Artist dies. It tends to be very. They're sad.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of documentaries been done on me that are no less pathetic, probably. But except that I never got to the heights of anything because of my addictions and things. But anyways, a little bit of that's changed. I've accomplished a little bit. And so Richard taught me to be able to write, and I hadn't gotten out of the 10th grade, and so I don't know. I can't do commas. I don't mess with commas, and I mean I'll put them in my stuff, but they're not right, and I don't let that stop me. I write because I love to write.
Yeah.
Music usually comes first, and what I do is I write stories and then strip them out for my songs.
Sure.
But yeah, I feel really good when I write. Richard, and he empowered me to do that. And it wasn't by going, oh, Billy, Billy, the little misunderstood rock and roll star from Tucson, local rock star. Who cares? He didn't give a shit. You know what I mean, man?
He's very real, huh?
He was a very real guy, man. And so it was very good for me.
That's good. Your writing's been compared to Cormac McCarthy's, who actually doesn't use much punctuation himself. He's pretty anti-punctuation.
Well, he seems like he has the ongoing sentence all the time,
Yeah.
So
I think that's okay.
Yeah. I wish I could sometimes, but hell, if I'm going to go back to night school again. But yeah, writing is really neat, and it was beautiful to see guys in there, man, that had nothing, that came from nothing, that had nothing, and they were able to express themselves, and that was a wonderful thing to see, man.
Absolutely,
man. It was really empowering.
Yeah, and he did that he volunteered for those guys for like 30 years or something.
All
like
he got was shit from the administration.
Yeah,
he had killings in his class. He had riots where the convicts tried to open the door so they could kill Richard.
Oh wow!
And the guys that were in his class held the door so they couldn't get in. He was more of a convict than half the poo-butt convicts I knew.
Right.
So,
well, it didn't deter him. He must have saw something in you guys too. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it for as long as he did.
Right. But
he just stopped doing it recently.
Yeah, he just stopped. And he's a stand-up guy.
I understood he published a book about it too.
Yeah. It's not on the damn it, the wire. Crossing the Wire. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you, Jesus. Crossing the Wire. If you could get a hold of that, it's around. It's a fantastic book about his work with convicts and with prisons, and it's just incredible. And I would tell you, if you want to read a great Southwestern, like the poet laureate of the damn Southwest, what I'd call him.
Yeah, I've read that.
That's Richard, man.
Yeah.
And he won't say that. He don't like to toot his own horn, but he's a humble son of a bitch, and he's a great man. You know.
I'd like to hear a little of your writing too.
Yeah, and, I'd love to read something.
I've got. I think you posted this on. Do you want to read this from Facebook?
Sure.
Or?
Yeah, I just wrote it about a month ago, and I don't write as much as I used to, but this is called Parole, and it's just a description of what my parole was like.
All right.
So I'll try to read slow.
Make sure you keep your finger on there so it doesn't black out on you.
Okay. Keep the finger on the
yeah.
Okay.
I've got a screensaver.
I got a flip phone. I'm not hip to these nice ones.
It's okay.
Oops, it's saying copy text. What did I do wrong? Or just stay there, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
I want to tell you a story a while back, a long while. I had finished up 15 months in CB8, an isolation unit in Florence. 2 guards came out to the exercise/dog kennel, cuffed me up and took me down to a guard in a tie at a desk. He checked off a few boxes, told me that I was done here, and that I'd finish up my bit in Mojave Unit, a high medium near Agua Prieta. I would see the parole board in 5 or 6 months, contingent upon the absence of any further infractions. Well, that'll do her, he said. I went up to the parole board some 7 months later. My mom, dad, and my wife all made the drive to show, unlike most, that I had a support system and maybe reach inside me to encourage my last hope, still hanging round. The board was a group of sullen pedestrians, chained to statutes, numbers, and the shelf life of felons. They were short on listening and long on 100 ways to say denied. I went up for parole 1, 2, 3 times. Each time they moved papers around, looked up to my visitors at the appropriate moments. But it was a done deal, and everybody knew it. And as they drug out 9 years of my write-ups, verdicts from their kangaroo court proceedings, I&I investigations, gang involvement, descriptive notes of my wife's Q&A and strip search, well, it was, needless to say, it was overkill. It did prevent any further outside intrusion with my diminished support system. 6 months later, I went up before them again. The faces changed, but they was all too familiar, and my wife seemed almost relieved when they apologetically concurred, nah. It was in those late afternoons when walking back to my bunk that I noticed the world outside had become abstract. A satellite speeding around a planet I had compartmentalized, at least the friends, family relationships, and only now did I accept the miscue that I held no key back in. It takes what it takes for some. I could guess a year might do it for others. Well, maybe they do, and maybe they don't. But I fell off the edge of the world. It didn't matter which world, just that at most flipped a switch. For me, it was just a sign of things to come. Another Christmas, 2 riots, heroin, more heroin, and my body was tight. It took the edge off. I wasn't enough. I felt my ligaments, my calf muscles had been stuffed inside a smaller frame. A friend, had run up his tab with the Border Brothers. Maybe he had lost his alarm for trepidation, danger. He stood 6 feet something, but wasn't a bully. Anyhow, they moved him up back to the walls, people dropping kites on him, sea eyes, rats. It never stopped. They took out his eyes so they could keep doing dope deals. And when I got out, I made my way to his mother's house to talk to her. I didn't know what to say. I just knew I had to go. I'd had my share. It was just one more step backwards into a vacuum that had no end. But entrances appeared like it was fucking Houdini. The loudspeakers draped on poles crackled on a Friday morning just after count. Sedlmayr, 63888, report to Parole Board and Reclass building on North Yard. Shit, I had just fixed and was cleaning the outfit out when the essay keeping chodos for me whistled. Cell block pig coming down, Holmes. Give you a pass to the yard, Sedlmayr. I was good and loaded, rubbing my nose. He wished me good luck. I washed my face, threw on a work shirt, and lit up a Camel. As I walked slow, keeping to the right of the crowd. Jesus, the chow hall smelled like rotten vegetables. I made eye contact with men I knew and went through a quick pat-down. Wand, knocked on the door. Another wand. Open your mouth, son. He poked out. Stick out your tongue. You just woke up, huh? Yep, I said, just woke up, boss. It was a good hour and some before they called my number. I slowly took a chair. I was dead calm. I didn't give a shit. No one was there to disappoint no more. I laughed quietly. It was all a charade. Fixed. I answered the same questions. Can you speak up? Oh, yeah, sure I can. Just couldn't find one authentic word in them or in me. It was static, like on a little AM radio I'd had when I was a kid. I didn't tell them how sorry I was for this or that and the other thing, 'cause I wasn't. Not this day. When I stepped out for their final approach, all I thought about was that I had a ball of that shit hidden in the broken light fixture on my run. It took less than 10 minutes this time. Shit, the guard laughed. What you do to tick them off? Nothing, boss. Whole lot of nothing. He stopped laughing and stood near me as they read their decision. It took a second to get inside my head. You have served over 85% of your sentence, and we grant you parole. Of course it was intensive. Of course, I mumbled back. But I felt nothing, no different, and that was why I was ready to go. I understood that much. I was asked to sign some paperwork, and I could almost feel the empty vessel that had been carried as a child's body and now gave it up to the darkening of the light for good. Parole, William Sedlmayr, 2019.
Wow, it's intense. Hard.
More intense to live.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. They don't. Do they still have a parole board these days?
I think they did something like make it so you do 85% of your 85. Like on mine was old thing. You did so much time, and then you'd have to go up in front of these bullshit people and beg their forgiveness. And I had so much stuff, and so much. They were, at that point, fond of saying I was in the Aryan Brotherhood, which I was not. I was not. I was an independent. But I had friends that were, because friends in there were far and few between.
Sure.
And there were some good men in that. I don't agree for the politics of that shit.
Right.
Not for 1 second, man. I had a Mexican wife.
Yeah.
Who I came to a lot of fist fights with behind her when I'd come back. When I was first in.
There's only so many ways you can choose your friends in there.
Right, but there were some good men, and funny,
Yeah.
most of them are all dead, or they got tired of playing the game,
Sure.
Some of them opted out. Anyways, man, it's no place for a person, and I wouldn't suggest it as a. I think in the Hispanic community, this will sound racist. I don't really care because I know who I am.
Sure.
In the Hispanic community, a lot, I used to see a sort of a thing take place that with the white people, Caucasians, you would see them embarrassed family members coming and hi, and doing this dance of being embarrassed. The Mexican Hispanic community, however, came in, had fun, were very emotional and seemed to enjoy their visits. And it's because, and the same with the blacks. Hell, they've been doing this for so goddamn long. It was like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth, man. And I hope one day that's not how it is.
Sure.
But it sure is right now.
Right.
And it sure was back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Probably more so.
More so. A lot more so. But I don't think anybody gives a shit what I think of politics and what I think about changing the world. No one's interested, and that's okay. I certainly haven't, don't have that right. I haven't earned it, but they should listen to some people that they're not just the people they want to hear.
Yeah.
It's good to hear from people that have been through their system and still live to tell about it.
Right.
Well,
that the parole board story, it's a sad story, but it's well written. I mean, I enjoyed the imagery of it.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you think that? Do you think you became a better writer in prison?
Oh, I was never a writer before.
So you became a writer in.
So I became a little bit of a writer in. Yeah, I got a novel called Teenage Jesus and the Tattooed Love Boys.
Oh, really?
And it's one of the songs is on this record. It's called Teenage. It's just a little excerpt from the record. That's one song on that. And on my new record, I want to put a bunch of pieces on there and make them incorporate with the music. And
I really enjoyed that about your music. That it's like it listens like a story. And I've always liked that. I like Leonard Cohen and Nick Cave and all that kind of stuff. So I really like storytellers.
Van Zandt, or let me think who I really liked. Oh man, there's so many great writers.
Sure.
I was a huge Elton John fan. Not the stuff for 20 years, 30 last years, but the Tumbleweed Connection, Madman. Those albums are huge to me. They were really powerful to me when I was young. And there was a man named Willie DeVille, Mink DeVille, that had a big influence on me. And a lot of just goddamn great writers, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, a lot of those guys, Guy Clark, Steve Earle, a lot of Texas writers and stuff that had they basically what a writer does is sort of mark down the zeitgeist of the time, what's happening in the society at the time, and certainly our society right now is in a sad state,
right?
And it definitely needs someone to get out there and tell the truth, or else it'll just become like Disney. It'll become like a ride from Disneyland. You know what I mean?
Well, you were a writer who was talking about current events. You were a writer for the Tucson Weekly.
I wrote for the Tucson Weekly for a couple of years and did a couple of cover stories and then and other stuff. And I had a real good editor because everyone needs an editor, and me, who doesn't have a 10th grade education, I need someone to put it in the commas. And
hey, that's what editors are for, right?
And Brian was a badass writer. He's a good writer. He's had a lot of good luck. His last book is on Amazon now as a movie, and Spent Saints. And
okay.
So he's real good, but he's the one that kind of cleared the way for me to do it.
That's cool.
So yeah.
Well, I'd like to end with a song, but before that, what are your plans for the near future, and what projects are you working on right now?
All right. I'm working on projects that are close to home. I'm trying to do some things that can help the migrants, people trying to get here. I have a song called Stateless. I don't know that I want to give it to you on here, but let me, if I can find it real quick.
Oh, whatever ones you're comfortable with.
I just want to read it just a tiny bit. If I can find it real quick, maybe I can't. But it's there's this whole thing with the migrants. And you know, America was a melting pot. That was the whole thing about this country, you know, that was made clear to me from my father, who I love, and my mother, that we are, the whole point of this place is an experiment of letting people of different face, of different colors, come and make this like the grand experiment, man.
Make it go over.
And what's happened is you got a bunch of assholes that want to bring this country back 50 years, and they're racists, and they're fascists, not complete fascists. They're not Mussolini, but in their own little special ways, they ain't much better, frankly. And when you have a realtor as a president who has never had 1/10 of a centimeter of empathy for anyone else, that tends to trickle down to everything else. And it's sad, man, because you know what? There's something I love about this country, the national parks. My father, who was a banker, was a great man and to me, and worked really hard for the Nature Conservancy. These guys have turned back almost all the work that was done, selling out these lands, making the EPA so it's non-functional, just letting big business have its thing, not being part of the climate control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a bit depressing when you think about the whole thing, man. I find it real frustrating, and I do have to talk about it, or I don't feel like I'm doing anything. Like if I don't talk about it, I feel like I'm complicit. You know?
Right.
So, and I'm still complicit. I'm an American, and I'm not out in the street with a machine gun. And I don't think that would work real well for me, probably.
No, probably. I don't think it works very well for anybody. I don't think it's just you. I don't think any of us can get away with that just yet.
I'm not whatchamacalling that. I'm just saying it makes one think about that, because you can get pretty frustrating looking at the listening to the impeachment hearings where Republicans try to make you see, that's the only thing that gave me some faith this week, was hearing that woman talk and a couple other men that are that obviously believe in America, believe that what we should do, and that we should help people, and that we give money to the Ukraine to fight Russia, you know, to keep them out from using them and bring violence to their people, and then we hold it back from them to do some pathetic third grade, you know what I mean? It's just, anyways, I should shut up.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
You're not alone on that. It's a bad state of things
I
right now.
find it absolutely stirring. I wake up in the morning, and sometimes the other morning I started screaming. I listened to 5 minutes of that hearing, and I went outside and started screaming, and I thought, wow, I don't want to get thrown out of my house. I better chill out. But, you know, anyways.
I think there's a lot of people screaming right now.
I think there are too, man. But there's also fear. You get afraid because you think, wow, man, people don't really care. But I will hope that people do care. And that's what that last thing I'll say. I hope that people do care and that it means something. Oh, I shot a giraffe. Then I sawed him in half. Because God told me 2-3 rounds and he was through. In the deep, dark jungle, how does a man survive? I got my trophy home thanks to my seasoned guides. My baby and me, we bought our own pharmacy for when I'm feeling sad, 'cause the world makes me mad. Me, I got no truck with the law. I'll sit my problems down through my favorite plastic straw. Let's build a wall. Let's build it big and tall. One nation under God. Well, that depends whose side you're on. We got to keep our country clean. Stateless, stateless refugee. Stateless, stateless refugee. It's a real little protest song. It's only about 2 minutes. It's real loud and obnoxious. Yeah. And it's supposed to be. Oh, but I guess that was my way of trying to combat some of the ugliness I see, you know. So
I think writing is a good way of doing that.
Yeah, writing is a very good way of doing that. And there's a lot of great writers, and writing can change stuff. It can help, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
People don't believe it maybe, but it really can.
Echoes through generations.
Yeah, indeed it does. And so when you called and asked me to do this, and I found out that you had done a little time, and I thought, well, man, there's no way I won't help this guy. And just so if anybody's watching this, I was supposed to do this 2 weeks ago when I had about 103 fever, and being a good son of my parents, I'm a good martyr. I was taught the art of martyrdom. So I told him, hey, man, come get me.
Yeah.
And I'll be there. And he heard my voice and said, no, I don't think it's probably like self-preservation. You probably thought, I don't want to get that, man. Anyways.
I didn't want to get sick, but I wanted to hear your song, and I thought maybe when he's not dying that it'd be better.
So
I really appreciate you being here.
Man, it was really nice, man.
You want to take us away with the song?
I'll take you away with the song.
Sounds
yeah.
good.
And if people are out there, my stuff's on YouTube. I have a website where I sell my records. It's Billy, BILLYSED, BillySed.com. And I'm not easy to, not hard to find. You know.
No, you're all over Spotify, YouTube. You type your name and you're gonna find them.
Yeah, I've been in this town a long time, and I toured Europe a few times, whatnot. So. They seem to like me over there.
Yeah.
They do like
Open
me
for
over
the
there.
Ramones and
at 17, that's my claim to fame. Right? Anyways, this is called the Ironclads, and this song took me. It took me a good. This is crazy, but it took me about 3 weeks to write. I did pay attention in history class as a kid. I've always loved history. I feel like if you can't learn from history, then you're doomed to repeat it again and again. And still I managed to, but I like to look at the history of America and the history of other countries. And this song is about the Civil War and the Monitor and the Merrimack. And what happened? They were the Ironclads that fought for who was going to take the Mississippi. Because if you had the Mississippi, you could win the war. So anyways, I'm proud of this one. All right. And thanks again, man.
Hey, thank you for
coming.
It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
They fit the hull with railroad ties, run 6 knots in the water. Reopen the supply lines for Dixie's sons and daughters. Twisted effigies of Manassas and Antietam. If you owned the Mississippi, you could crush 'em, you could beat 'em. God's hand was on the water, they'd train balls of orange flame. The Cumberland would lift, then she'd sink beneath the waves. Frigates lined the river, slave ships off the coast of Spain. Well, sirens called the Neptune who disseminate their names. Yeah, 100 and some 10 degrees inside the engine room. Men work, sweat upon their knees too. Captains and their crews. A boiler pleads and whistles steam. A sailor shovels coal. Our country's map been sawed in half. Gone the way Great Plains and the buffalo. So now you know to free a man's soul. Huh! Yep! One summer day they traded rounds, yet nothing left a mark. By wintertime the ironclads were lost into the dark. Maritime cathedrals got no oxygen for breathing. But early in the morning, in the ebb tide, I can see 'em.
Thank you very much, Billy.
You're welcome. Man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.